Hey everybody, Yankee here, but today I'm going to do a little bit of a Rod Serling imitation because I want you to imagine, if you will, a world where you wake up one Sunday and it's your one day off of the week. And you decide, I'm not going anywhere today. I'm going to sit on the couch and I'm going to catch up on my box DVD set of The Real Housewives. Going to sit there all day and vegetate. And you do that for hours. And as you're sitting there watching TV for hours after you already got up late because it's your day off, you hear a knock on the door and you go answer the door and it's the police. And those police start showing you pictures of a car that looks very much like yours, except it's got a swing set wrapped around it, asking you if that's your car. And you say, well, that can't be my car. Last time I saw my car, it didn't have a swing set wrapped around it. So you look out into your driveway and you go, my car is missing. My car was there in my driveway. Now it's gone. That might be my car. And the police say, well, we do believe it is your car. And it was stolen last night around 2 a.m. from what we can tell. And the people who stole it drove it around all evening. And then when we tried to catch them this morning, they drove through a playground, ran over a bunch of kids, wrapped it around a swing set, and then fled. But we caught them. And you're like, oh my God, that's horrible. And the police say, so you're saying the car was in your driveway, it was stolen probably sometime in the night, we think it was around 2 o'clock, and this was your car, you're confirming all that. And you say, well, yes, that does appear to be my car, and that does make sense. And they slap handcuffs on you and say, you're under arrest for murder. And you're like, how am I under arrest for murder? You said you caught the people that were driving the car. And they say, well, yes, but you're under arrest for murder because you're responsible for what they did with that car because of two things. One, you said it was in your driveway. You have a garage. You didn't have it in the garage and you didn't have that garage locked. Also, it was stolen around 2 a.m. It's now 2 p.m. You never reported it stolen. And you say, well, I can't fit my car in my garage. We have 2 other cars in there, so only 2 can fit. One has to stay outside. And the police say, doesn't matter. And you say, well, I didn't report it stolen because I didn't know till just now. And the police say, doesn't matter. It happened, whether you know it or not, doesn't matter. You didn't report the car stolen and you didn't have it secured in a garage. So therefore, you're responsible for the murders that people who stole your car committed. And you're like, how can this be happening in America? How can I be responsible for this? I did nothing wrong. Someone stole my property and misused it. And the police say, yeah, but you know a car is dangerous, so you should not have ever left it out of a garage. And you're like, but my car was locked and there were no keys in it. And they're like, oh yeah, they hotwired it. They broke the side window, hotwired the car. We already know that. But still, the car wasn't locked in a garage. You're responsible. Now imagine that that's happening to you. You're responsible for murders that you didn't commit because you didn't report the car stolen and because you didn't have it locked in a garage. That's pretty bad. But then it gets worse. Then the people whose children were run over and killed decide they're going to sue you for millions. So now you're facing life in jail, and also anything that you had that you could have passed on to your family or your kids is gone because they're taking all of it. And also these families get contacted by big-time lawyers and politicians and say, you know what? We don't think you're getting enough money from that person for your loss. So let's go after the maker of the car because that was a Maverick that's made by Ford. So therefore, Ford is responsible because they knew their cars could be used as weapons. And they didn't take any special precautions to stop that. They let people buy cars that were just going to park them in their driveways where people could just get a hold of them anytime they wanted. They didn't make them where they couldn't be hotwired or anything. They were complicit. So then they sue Ford for billions of dollars. And then some local politicians who are about to come up for re-election and want to win some points, they say, you know what? This is happening way too often. This is too dangerous that people have these cars. If you don't have a garage and you don't keep your car locked up in a garage, you can't have a car. You can't buy them. You have to prove you have a garage with a lock on it, and you have to prove you've been trained to drive properly before you can buy a car. And people say, well, what about poor people that don't have garages, or people that are younger, live in apartments and don't have garages? Doesn't matter. They can't buy a car. If they can't properly secure it, they can't own it. If they can't prove they've been trained to use it properly, they can't own it. And that is the world you're living in when you wake up today. How awful is that? And would anyone ever stand for any of that? No, they would not. It would never even be something people would even consider tolerating. But anti-gunners do the exact same thing with guns. You know, just like the people wouldn't care that, hey, poor people, young people can't buy cars now because of these ridiculous requirements you put on it. They wouldn't tolerate that. But they'll tolerate you being held responsible for what someone does if they break your window, reach in on your nightstand, take your legally owned firearm out of your property without your consent and use it inappropriately. They'll say you're responsible for that because you knew that could happen. You should have taken extra precautions, just like you should have put your car in a garage. So they'll do that with guns, though, even though guns are a constitutional right. Cars are not. Cars are a byproduct of your constitutional rights to travel freely, but they're not directly protected by the Constitution. Firearms for citizens are. But anti-gunners want you to live in that crazy world like I put forward in that first scenario, where the cops show up at your door and hold you responsible for murder. If a gun gets stolen from you and you can't show you did everything possible to keep that gun from the hands of a bad guy, going above and beyond, paying extra money for a safe and putting it in something, they can't get into. Or even then, if they get into it, you didn't buy a good enough safe. All of those kind of things. You got to jump through those kind of hoops. And also, you've got to report it right away. If not, you face extra responsibility, even if you didn't know it was stolen. Because you are responsible for that. Because it's a deadly weapon, even though cars kill more people and are more dangerous than your handgun in the hands of a legal, responsible adult person. But still, that's the world anti-gunners want us to live in. That ridiculous world I put forward. That's how crazy they are. That's how far they are detached from reality. That you, while exercising a constitutional right, if you are victimized, if a criminal breaks into your home, steals your property, and then acts like a criminal with that property, that's your fault. You're not a victim, you're actually an accomplice. Because you should have looked forward and saw, hey, there's a potential that someone might violate my rights, victimize me, and then use tools that they took from me to victimize someone else. That's the same as the scenario I put forward with the car, and nobody would tolerate that. That would be the most ridiculous thing. But they've talked people into tolerating that with guns. And one of the reasons they get away with it is because, most people own cars. Most people don't own guns. And the people that do own guns, they allow the worst of them to be the people that stand out in the front and make the most noise. So people who don't own guns say, well, if those are the kind of people that own guns, I'm okay with cracking down on them. Just like if, the worst people that own cars were representing cars and most people didn't own them, it'd be real easy to demonize cars if most people didn't recognize that they own them and they have to have them. So start standing up, start being a good example for the Second Amendment. Start shouting down bad examples of the Second Amendment. Start doing all those things. Be a responsible gun owner and stop tolerating these injustices. You'd be surprised at how many pro-gun people say, sure, I'm okay with requirements to lock up your guns. Who doesn't lock up their guns? Sure, I'm okay with training to handle your gun. Everyone should have training before they own a gun. The gun community itself puts a lot of this stuff forward and legitimizes a lot of this stuff. Stop doing that. Realize how crazy the left is when it comes to guns and start countering that crazy with common sense because, like I said, they're so far detached from reality. We don't have to go to extra means or extra effort to make them look crazy. They do that themselves.